his young playoff career. So, Shannon, you know, I know this is your guy, my homeboy. So who wins? What is the score?
Skip, for me, there's only one team that was playing worse than Kansas City down the stretch that made the playoffs. That was the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we saw what happened to them.
Yep.
And they did the same thing. They was playing poorly. They won a game, and then they side a lot of their guys out. And then they didn't come out ready to play. And then you see what happened. They're going home. And then they're still having crying over spilt milk about how disrespectful Cleveland was and all that other stuff.
Yep.
This is concerning with me because I didn't like what I saw. I don't really think that the Chiefs played well since they beat Tampa and maybe New Orleans. But I don't like the way they played coming down the stretch. And I thought Andy would play those guys at least for a half to get them some because they were going to take the half the bye and they're going to have a week off. And so I don't love the way they were playing, but they have Patrick Mahomes. Tyreek is healthy. He was nursing that hamstring. He was on a pitch count. He's had 3 weeks to get 100% healthy. The difference between Pittsburgh and Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, yes, he will throw the ball short, but he's looking to throw the ball over your head. And Kansas and the Browns condensed the field because they became unconcerned.
Yep.
They were not even worried in the slightest that Ben was going to attempt to throw the ball over their head. Well, they don't have that luxury this week. I understand what Cleveland's going to try to do.
Yep.
Cleveland's going to try to establish Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They're not going to snap the ball until around 5, 4, 3, and they're going to try to limit the amount of times and the amount of possessions that Patrick Mahomes has the football. But he don't need it much. The question is, can Cleveland's defense, can they get to, say, 30 points, Skip, -4, -3 turnovers? Because I think that's what happened last week to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh gave them 24 points via turnover. First play of the game was a quick 7. I don't believe Patrick Mahomes turns the ball over like Ben did last week. And I think it's going to be a close game, but I think Mahomes wins this ball game. I don't believe the Browns can get to 31 without getting a scoop and score or a pick six or a short field. So I took the Chiefs 31-24.
So you think it'll be a little closer than a lot of people do?
I do.
You know, I'm feeling special today, as in upset special. I just feel like the Browns have been heading north, and I'm not saying Kansas City's heading south, but they're just sort of stuck in no man's land right now. And Patrick Mahomes hasn't played a down of football for 3 weeks, coming off, you could argue, the worst stretch of his career, because he's been average over his last 7 games. He ranked 9th best in Pro Football Focus's rankings over his last 7 starts. It's not that guy. That's not the best quarterback in football. And furthermore, to your point about Kansas City, man, they've struggled. You look at these games, like I'm just going to give you the quick margins of victory. They beat Carolina at home by 2. Then at Las Vegas, remember that game? It took the late touchdown pass. They won by 4. And then at Tampa, Brady came all the way back to 27-24, couldn't get the ball back in the last 4 minutes, so they hung on to win by 3. Denver at home, they beat by 6. I know it's a division match, rivalry. At Miami, they won by 6. At New Orleans, they won by 3. And then the Atlanta Falcons, whose defense you have torched on this show.
Yeah,
you say it's the worst pass defense in pro football.
They were.
Well, at Kansas City, in Patrick Mahomes' last outing, Atlanta lost by a grand total of 3 points. And he threw for a grand total of 278 yards.
Yeah.
A guy who can throw for 500, threw for 278. I mean, Brady threw for 399 1 week later against this same defense at Tampa in their final regular season.
What, 340-something a week earlier, a couple of weeks earlier?
2 weeks earlier. And in that final game, Brady threw for 4 touchdowns with 1 interception, which was not his fault. Little Scotty Miller popped it up in the air. And Patrick only completed 55% of his passes that day against the Atlanta Falcons. So how can you make a case that they're rolling or they're on fire? Because if you look at the last 6 games, their point differential and their points scored both rank 11th in the NFL.
Yeah.
Well, that's not hot. They're not streaking, as Coach Landry used to tell me, into the playoffs.
They've won games, Skip, but if you look at it, they hadn't been hot since the first 3 quarters of when they beat Tampa. Other than that, they struggled. They got off to the slow start against, Skip, remember Miami? They were down 10-0, and they go hot again. Mahomes turned the ball through 3 picks, took a 30-yard sack for a loss. So you're right, Skip. Down the stretch, the last month and a half in the season, this is not the Kansas City that we saw the first month and a half of the season. But it doesn't matter now. Cleveland's playing with a lot of confidence. Cleveland believe that they can beat this team. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with going into Pittsburgh, where they had lost, 17 straight games, hadn't won in God knows how long.
Yep.
And so they says, look, we're going to run the football. We're going to, Skip, I don't believe you can beat a scoring contest with the Chiefs. I don't believe the Browns can score, because I know they can. I know Kansas City at home, they can get to 42. They can get to 49, 50 points.
Yep.
Can Cleveland get to that? No. They want to minimize Patrick Mahomes' possession. They want to possess the football and come away with points. Now, it would be better if they possessed the football 6-7 minutes and got touchdowns. But, you know, if you get a field goal, but at some point in time, Skip, when you get in the red zone, you're going to have to pay it off with a touchdown because we know Mahomes is going to come right back down the field at you.
Okay, so this game boils down to 3 factors for the Browns on offense. The first factor is Baker Mayfield has played much better than you give him credit for on this show. And that's over the last 11 games since they lost Odell. I'm knocking on wood for Odell, but I promise you it was no coincidence that Baker started to grow up as a quarterback without Odell. He was too Odell conscious, Odell centric. And once he started to spread the wealth and not force the ball to Odell anymore, things started happening for the better, and then for the good, and then for the great, because over these, he's 8-3 in his last 11 games. He's 19 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions. And remember, the 3 losses included the shootout that he lost to Lamar, when I thought Baker was extraordinary in that game. And they did lose to the Jets, but they got COVID racked, and he lost his top 4 receivers going into that game. Okay, so what does he have on his side? Who are his bodyguards? He has simply the best offensive line in football.
Yeah.
And Pro Football Focus backs me up on that, because they have 4 of their 5 are ranked in the top 10.
Right.
Well, when have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Whoever.
Is Conklin back?
He's got a hamstring, but he's limited. But I think he's going to try to go. At least a lineman with a hamstring, you got a little better chance of playing than a receiver or DB.
Well, I'm going to speed rush him. I'm going to make him kick out there in a hurry.
Okay, maybe. But Joel Bitonio is back, because he was on the COVID list. And so it's Bitonio, Treader. Wyatt Teller is ranked #1 in Pro Football Focus of all the linemen. He's #1 ranked. And then you mentioned Conklin, and the kid out of Alabama, the first-round pick, Jedrick Wills, is ranked 50th, but they have him 2nd ranked among the rookie tackles. Okay? So that's an offensive line.
Yes.
And as you well know, Nick Chubb, with a little help from Kareem Hunt, they can run it down your throat.
They can.
Okay? And Kareem Hunt is going, quote-unquote, home to the team that drafted him originally. And I like their chances of controlling the football and winning the clock. They're going to have to win the clock if they're going to win this game. I think they have to win the clock 35-25 in minutes.
I agree.
And Baker's going to have to be perfect. He's going to have to be careful, and he's going to have to be deadly accurate. And he's going to have to hit all the key 3rd down passes for 5-6 yards. They're
definitely going to have to be 50% or plus on 3rd down.
They will. I totally agree. So given all that factor on offense, and given the fact they get Denzel Ward and they get Kevin Johnson, their starting corners, back on defense, because they've been on the COVID list, all of a sudden the momentum feels like, if Kansas City isn't on its game immediately, if rest equals rust, then they get off to a slow start. We saw them get off to slow starts, obviously, in both their home playoff games last year, but it didn't matter because they just blew those 2 teams, the Texans and the Titans, off the field once they got hopelessly behind to both of them. So, to me, this time it will be a close game, and I think the Browns have all the momentum, and they're hot, while Kansas City is going to try to flip the switch to get hot again. And the weather's it's going to be 40 degrees. It's going to be a little windy, 10 to 20 miles an hour, but it's not foul weather.
Right.
Okay?
And hell, it gets cold in Cleveland, too.
It gets cold in Cleveland. So I like everything adding up to the fact that Baker Mayfield is growing up before your very eyes. And again, there were lots of shots taken. Sammy Watkins with the tweet.
Yeah.
You know, right? Do you remember that one where he basically just said, you know, one of his followers said, looks like we're going to have some competition next week. And Sammy Watkins fired back to him, I wouldn't go that far, LOL.
Right.
So they are LOL. And Baker took the high road, which I thought was very mature. Oh, well, that's how you have to be. You have to be confident. They've been together a long time. They believe in themselves.
Yeah, Baker took that confidence. Had Baker Mayfield been in Oklahoma, and he's playing anybody else when he knows he's the substantial favorite, he has the most talent, he's not taking the high road. This is one of the times that he knows he doesn't have the most talented football team.
I totally agree. Obviously, Kansas City is better than Cleveland. It's just better. All around better. Yet, Cleveland is hotter.
Oh, no
and Baker is saying, well, watch what will happen. If Baker pulls off the upset I believe he's capable of pulling off, then he will let them hear about it in the postgame.
Just like he did Pittsburgh.
Remember, what did Juju say? The Browns is the Browns.
Right.
Meaning they're just still those, that doormat from Cleveland.
And they were dancing. Look, Skip, here's the thing. When we look at Kansas City's defense, what do? They're built to play with a lead. You got Mahomes, you got that offense. We want to be able to take the run element out of it, put you down.